Well, Casey Anthony partied for 31 days while her daughter was missing. Wet t shirt contest, dancing at bars. The daughter, Kaylee, would never be seen again. Well, the grandmother wanted to see her granddaughter, but Casey kept making excuses as to why she couldn't. Finally, after Casey's car turned up at a towing yard, the grandmother had had enough. She called 911 and said, "It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car." Well, the lies that followed would make Pinocchio envious. We are talking lies of epic proportion. She led investigators to the home of Zanny the nanny, a person who only existed in Casey's mind. She took the police on an actual tour of her workplace at Universal Studios. Problem was, she didn't work at Universal Studios. Finally trapped in a figurative and literal corner, she shrugged her shoulders and said, "Yeah, I don't work here." If Vegas had odds on whether there would be a guilty verdict in Casey's future, you'd be well served to take the over. This was a prosecutor's dream and a defense attorney's nightmare. Well, Leander and I, both attorneys, are going to unpack this bizarre story and try to explain, the best we can, how this case ended in a not guilty verdict. Leander is a prosecutor. I am a constitutional lawyer who defends criminals' constitutional rights. And together we are taking this case from murder to a verdict. In today's episode, we unpack the forensic evidence that the prosecutors had to work with as they prepared for trial. For example, if the car smelled like a dead body had been it, how do you present smell to a jury? Stay tuned. Well, I am really excited about this podcasting project, Murder to Verdict, because I get to ask an actual prosecutor what she thinks about one of these fascinating true crime stories. And the Casey Anthony story is amazing and hits on all cylinders. Now, to catch you up to speed from our first episode, what did we learn? All right, this is what we learned. On July 15th of 2008, the car that Casey was driving was found abandoned, and so a notice was mailed to the grandparents, George and Cindy. Now, it took them a couple of days before they got this notice, but when they got that car, it smelled like a dead body. It
Dead
was,
body.
yeah, I have no idea what that smells like, but it was not good. And so something was up. Though you wonder if they really thought it was a dead body. But that started this interchange between the grandmother, Cindy, and the daughter, Casey, about how irresponsible Casey had been. She had gone AWOL for 31 days, and the grandmother really missed her granddaughter, Kaylee. Well, that led off to the 911 calls. Casey goes all George Costanza on the cops, tells stories that who knows how long she had been coming up with those stories, but they were doozies. You don't want to miss that first episode where we unpacked all those crazy stories. Probably the craziest one was Zanny the nanny. I mean, Zanny the nanny doesn't even exist, but apparently this was the lady who was watching her child, Kaylee. Well, after all these shenanigans and these wild stories and a goose chase that led them through Universal Studios, she was arrested for child endangerment. But already the national press had caught wind of this story. They were covering it because this was a national baby hunt. Where was baby or toddler, I don't even know how you describe a 3-year-old, Kaylee Anthony? And so the national media was following this, which seemed odd to a lot of people because the person probably with the most knowledge and the most idea on where to track down missing Kaylee was Casey, and she was sitting in jail. I'm just curious here. Leandra, does that seem odd to you that they would throw the mother in jail while they're trying to find the daughter?
No, not at all. I think if Casey had been somewhat honest from the beginning and just, I guess, more forthcoming, I don't know that she would not have ended up in jail anyway. But if she was willing to play ball with law enforcement and this was a true missing persons case at the time, I think things would have been a little bit different. Like I said, I don't know that she wouldn't have gone to jail, but maybe her bond would have been more reasonable, so she could have been out helping actively search for her missing baby.
Well,
But
let's
at that
talk
point
about
in
that
time,
bond. That bond was a $500,000, and they could not afford that. And so Casey Anthony was sitting in jail while the
the rest
police
of
and
the
the
world,
yeah was looking
the rest
for
of the world
Kaylee. So
absolutely. It was I was sorry, I was just gonna speak. I remember watching Nancy Grace just absolutely rail Casey every night. It seemed like she had something new to say.
she
I'm
was
I'm sure
part of
if
the
we asked
story,
Nancy today, she'd probably still have something to say.
right?
So
Because from the public's perspective, Kaylee was still alive. I imagine this was just like what the public was thinking back when Charles Lindbergh Jr. was missing. The whole world thought maybe tomorrow we'll find baby Charles Lindbergh Jr. Here they're probably thinking when I watch the news tonight, maybe they will have found baby
baby
Kaylee. Well,
Kaylee, yeah.
this was such a big deal that bounty hunter Leonard Padilla, I don't know if I butchered his last name, he was a famous bounty hunter back in those days. He paid the $500,000 bond to get Casey out so that way maybe with his help and her guidance they can find baby Kaylee. Let's just pause right here though because I want to hear from you what goes into the setting of the bond. I mean, it's a half a
Yeah.
million dollars. So would the bounty hunter have to pay a $500,000? Describe how that works.
Sure. So every jurisdiction is going to be a little bit different, but from my experience, bond is set at a rate of 10%. So likely he would have, and I can't do math, that's why I'm a lawyer, but 10% of half a million is what, $50,000.
$50,000.
So, and that was without a calculator just now. He would have had to post $50,000 to get Casey
And when you say
out of
post, I wanted
jail.
to say a different word. I think we should use a different word. Pay.
Sure.
I mean, he had to pay
Hey, yeah,
50. He's
fifty
not getting
thousand
that money
dollars.
back. When he posts
No.
bond, you're paying 10%. That's money that's leaving your pocket. You're never getting that money back.
You do get it back once your case is resolved, minus a small percentage. So bond is actually it's designed to ensure compliance with the process. So you're not gonna miss your court dates. You're gonna show up. You're gonna do all of the things that the court's ordered you to do, and it also you can have conditions of your bond. So like no contact orders. Um,
But hold on, I
don't
want to
commit
understand this because
crimes. Yeah.
it's a $500,000 bond. So you don't have a $500,000. If they had a $500,000, yeah, you give them the $500,000, and then when trial comes, you show up for trial, you get the $500,000 back. But they don't have a $500,000, so they go to a bonding company, and to that bonding company, they then pay right the 10% of it, and that 10% goes to the bonding company. That's like interest. I mean, that money is not coming back, right? Or am I missing it? Um,
I can't speak to bondsmen's because where I practice, we don't have bonds or bail people here. I know in Missouri they do. I'm not sure about Kansas where you're at, but we don't have bonds bailsmen. So I don't want to speak to that because, like I said, I'm a little uneducated on how those people operate. I know that it is something like a loan service where you
right.
basically you promise to pay them back and then they post the 10% of whatever the court has ordered your bond to be.
Yes, even
But
though you paid it back, you still don't get that interest back. You just get the
right, right.
principal back. And so here, this bounty hunter, Leonard Padilla, paid out 10% to the bonding company. He's the bounty hunter. He's going to make sure this person shows up for trial. That's why you get all these great TV shows, but still they're out the 50 grand. Well, this lasted less than a week, and he realized no, she has no idea where baby Kaylee is. So he revoked that, rescinded, and so she went back to jail. It's safe to say the hunt for baby Kaylee was going nowhere. And so here in the story, Leandra, I want to just pause this here because I think it's important in this podcast. This is about lawyers and how the legal process works in this true crime saga. What's going on in the legal world while the rest of the world is searching for baby Kaylee? Are they preparing a case? Eventually, we know this might go to trial. What is going on in the legal world as the rest of the world is searching for baby Kaylee?
Sure. So at this point in time, it's likely at this point in time she hadn't been charged with the homicide or anything, the murder or anything like that. She was only, I believe, charged with child endangerment at this
Correct.
point.
And I think maybe something about lying to officials during hindering an investigation because of all
Y-
the whoppers that she told.
Right. And so nothing of real significance. I mean, not that child endangerment is a small
No, I gotcha.
charge by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to, first degree murder,
Right,
it's
right, right,
it's
right.
it's just tiny little fish. So at this point in time, the prosecutor is building its case as far as that charge is concerned. At this point in time, no one is anticipating that Kaylee's going to be found deceased. So at this point, prosecutors have charged her with with the information that they have at that time, which is probable cause to believe she endangered her child in some way.
So at
Um,
this point in time, could they have charged her with murder? Because keep in mind, there's been no body discovered. Now, there
right.
have been things that they discovered that makes them question whether or not baby Kaylee is actually alive. And I have to think if you talk to the actual detectives and investigators, they probably thought they're not finding an alive baby, Kaylee, or else they would probably have the mother out of jail helping them look. But they said, I think they knew enough to know that this is not headed towards a reunification with the baby.
Right. And after, the first 48 or whatever, the chances go down so um, significantly as far as finding somebody alive. I don't know that I don't know, and I can't speak to what they thought, obviously. But at this point in the investigation, there's no reason at this point, this early, for them to believe that she was dead. But again, they're working the case. They're searching the home, or they're getting their search warrants together. They're searching the home. They're searching the vehicle. They're doing the dirty work. They're investigating at this point in time. So you don't need a body to charge a murder. There's actually a case in Nebraska where I'm at, not that long ago, where they were actually successful and got a conviction without a body. The victim was never found. So at this
Wow.
point in time, yeah, crazy. Different podcast, different day, but that we can talk about. But at this point in time, they're doing the dirty work, on feet on the ground, boots on the ground type work, building whatever case they believe that they're going to have against Casey. Um,
Now, I find it fascinating just to study. This is maybe why I geek out over history and I love teaching my CLE classes, but I really geek out over the process that we use in America to throw your butt in jail and keep it there for the rest of your life. I mean, we like our freedom, right? We like to do whatever we want. We have
yeah,
freedom, right? George Wallace in the movie Braveheart. We love freedom. How is it that we can take someone's freedom away and lock them in jail or even take their life away? I mean,
yeah.
what is
So
that process like? And I know in old times there was one old, let me just tell you this old way that they did trials. This is a long time ago. So this is ancient history, right? What they did was they took a millstone and they wrapped it around your neck and then they threw you in the lake. Okay. If you drowned,
you
that
were
meant
guilty?
no, if you drowned,
Oh,
that meant that the gods accepted you. You were innocent. Let's say you didn't drown. That meant that gods found you distasteful, spit you out of the god's mouth, in which case they then killed you. So whether you were innocent
you were going to
or
die either way.
it sucked to be in that system, right? We have a much better
Yeah.
system. So explain a little bit how
We
our
have
system works.
Sure. We have this beautiful thing called the Constitution, which provides us with this other beautiful thing called due process. Due process is the notice and opportunity to be heard, and all these other rights that you get when the government brings charges against you. So there's separation of powers involved. There's the government, the executive branch, the judicial branch, all of the things
Right.
working together. Um, and there's oversight. So the government doesn't just get to do things blindly. There's judicial oversight.
Right.
There's a process to these things. So as far as a timeline's concerned, a prosecutor needs probable cause to bring charges against an individual. They have to have probable cause to believe that a crime is committed. And at that point, they at that point of charging, they need a strong enough investigation. Again, only probable cause, which
All right,
is
so
like
I want to start though at
51.
the end. All right,
Sure.
let's start at the
Okay.
end. Okay, at
Okay.
the end, if you want a jury of your peers, now our system is based upon your right to a jury trial. So before you get thrown behind a slammer for the rest of your life, it's going to be a jury of your peers that's going to do that.
Yeah.
The
Which
government
is
has to,
scary.
yeah, it is very scary. Do you really want your fate being determined by 12 people who were too
Pulled in off the
stupid?
street? No. Too stupid to say they couldn't be fair or fair and unbiased. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not sure what to say about that, but I don't want to. I want to live my life in such a way that my fate is never in those 12 people's hands. But that is our system, and it's a great system, and I'm a big believer in it, of course. But the government has to prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. I mean,
just beyond a reasonable
a
doubt.
reasonable doubt.
So, not beyond all doubt, not beyond 100% certainty, nothing like that. It's just beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay.
And that's defined as belief so that you have so strongly. And I'm going to butcher this because I'm not reading it verbatim, but essentially, you see all the evidence and you believe in it so strongly that you would rely on it in the most serious transactions in your life.
Okay. So that's where we're getting, that in these jurors' minds, they will formulate a belief so certain that any major financial decision they make, they would
Or life
rely upon
decision.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's why I hate that definition because, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think in episode 1, where what is a more serious transaction in your life? Okay, getting married, but people marry the wrong people all the time for the wrong reasons all the time. Buying a home, people buy crappy homes, people buy crappy cars. Like, what is a more serious transaction in life that you I, I don't know. But how else would you define it at that point? So anyway,
And
that's
that's
my
great.
soapbox.
Bottom line is, this is different than a civil case. A civil case is it
The
more
burden's low.
right?
You just
Is more.
civil, sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No,
Civil
that's all
is
right.
just it's like a teeter-totter. So like you just have to tip the scales just a little bit to find for that one side. Whereas in a criminal case, it is the highest burden. It is the ceiling. It is beyond a reasonable doubt. And we're constantly as prosecutors running uphill trying to prove our case beyond a reasonable. I mean, it is I didn't realize I was naive at how high of a burden that is before I started actually practicing. It's high, and people absolutely hold you to that
And,
standard,
and
and they should,
and that's our
and they
system.
should, and they should absolutely. It should be that because again, you don't want to take someone's rights away, liberty away without due process, and that's part of the process.
So we have that we have a right to a jury trial. You have a right to
Counsel.
counsel. So
Yep.
you get to have a lawyer involved, representing you, assisting in your defense. Now the Supreme Court has spoken on that, and even though you have a right to a lawyer, the assistance of a lawyer, the client, the defendant, still gets to make the decisions. And so that's a critical
Absolutely.
distinction there because you're the one who has the most skin in this game. If you are the defendants, you still get to make the call unless you do something that takes away that right. I'm thinking of the Charles Manson trial where he was so belligerent and crazy and obnoxious. He wanted to defend himself, but the court said, no, you've lost that right. Now you got to get a lawyer in here, and the lawyer is going to take over this case. But you have a right to the assistance of counsel. What are some of the
The
other
right
rights
to
that you have?
remain silent. You have
Yes. What does
an
that mean?
absolute right, not to take the stand because you have the absolute right not to incriminate yourself. You have
So I believe the Fifth Amendment says you have a right not to be a witness against yourself, and that's at
correct.
trial, obviously. And so you have a right to, at trial, not be called up as a witness and offer testimony against yourself. Now, the Supreme Court has then backtracked that and said, well, if you have a right not to testify against yourself in court, that right then extends to before court saying things to law enforcement
Right.
that then law enforcement then repeats at trial. So it has emerged or divulged into this right to be silent. throughout
Right.
the process. And so that is, I think, also referred to as the Miranda right.
Yeah.
You have a right
Yep.
to be silent, have counsel. What are some of the other rights I'm missing?
Let me think about this.
Speedy trial.
That's a great one. I hate that one.
Yes.
And so and it's a great one, but it makes my job hard because when we bring charges, we have 6 months from the filing of the information, which starts the proceedings, to bring that case to closure, to
Okay.
trial. You have 6 months. There's things that toll that clock. So anytime the defense requests a continuance and it's granted, that tolls the clock. If they file motions to suppress or motions that are taken under advisement at any time while that issue is pending, it tolls the speedy clock for the state. So most cases don't get resolved within that 6 months, even when people invoke speedy trial. Usually it's a full year, calendar year, before a case is from filing to trial. So but it's hard because if somebody shows up first day and says, I'm invoking speedy and I want a trial and I want it at the next, docket, the next trial setting date, I better get my life together because
Yeah.
and not that it always happens that way. Generally, there's a few continuances here and there for discovery, for depositions, for that kind of thing. But if somebody invokes speedy, it's quick and
So
it's hard.
The Sixth Amendment says in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Now, this is going to control federal cases, but then it's also going to apply to the states as well, either through the
Yep. Through
14th
the
Amendment.
14th Amendment. Yep.
Right, or through the state's own
State's constitution.
constitution.
Sure.
And so, what does that speedy trial mean? Well, there is a federal law that again deals with federal cases, which said the indictment must be filed within 30 days of the arrest, the arraignment must occur within 10 days of indictment, and trial must begin within 70 days of the indictment. All of this just kind of goes to the point of they can't just throw you in jail and just sit on it. Now, I found out that's not the law everywhere else. In fact, in the Amanda Knox murder trial, she sat in jail for a year before charges were even brought against her for murder. And then the trial was not for another year after that. And so she stayed in jail for quite a long time before the charges were even brought. And so you can see why in America we said, you know what? No, they can't just throw you in jail and just wait. You have a
Right. And
right to.
right. And I'm not a huge obviously every system has issues, okay? And there's gripes about the American criminal justice system, 100% valid when people have those gripes, but I dare you to find a system that works better and that is more
Amen,
fair
sister. I love that.
because take a look around.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
We might point faults in our system and how things can be improved, but make no mistake about it, I think it's the
It's
best
the
system in the
best we
world.
got.
Yeah.
It's the best we got. And like it or not, and again, I am biased because I'm appearing today in as a prosecutor. I'm coming from my experience, but taking myself out of this role, the entire system is set up to the benefit of the defendant. Everything is in a light most favorable to the defendant,
It
all the
is.
way down to the rules of evidence that govern a jury trial. If I could come into a courtroom and present all the evidence that I have because it's all relevant, just because it's relevant, because that's how you get evidence in, it has to be relevant. Um, and something else can't keep it out. There's other rules that prohibit oh my god, I keep stuttering, sorry. Relevant information from coming in, whether that be hearsay, which is huge. There's exceptions, but it's huge. It's going to keep so much information out. If it's overly
Let's
prejudicial,
talk a
all
little bit about
evidence.
that hearsay you just mentioned, and a
Sure.
lot of our
Yeah.
listeners might have missed what that actually means. Well, the reason why we have these hearsay rules, hearsay is an out of court statement that's being offered for the truth of the matter. So, in other words, someone not in court says something, and then someone else is going to repeat that in court. And the problem with that is under the Constitution, you have a
Is you have a
right to
right to
confront. You're
confrontation.
right.
Yes.
And
That's
if
another
they
right we missed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge right.
Yeah.
And if we're just allowed to bring in hearsay, you're not really confronting the person who said that. And so that's why
Right.
we have our hearsay
And there's
rules.
only like 40 some exceptions or something crazy. I don't know. I think there's like 28 or something, but main ones.
Right.
Like I said, I can't count, so I don't quote me on that. But there's hearsay rules. There's if it's overly prejudicial, it's not coming in. But it's like, hello, if it should come in, like it's information the jury should absolutely get to see if it
For
points to the
for
guilt.
example, in the recent Alec Murdaugh murder trial, one of the things generally that's not allowed in a trial is character evidence. Like this person is a
Right.
bad dude. He doesn't pay his bills. He beats his spouse, or this guy's just a horrible dude. You
Yeah.
can't just run that character evidence in front of the jury, or else the jury will say, "Well, if that person's a bad dude, then it's probably likely he did this other bad
He's done
thing."
it right, right, or he's done it once, he's likely to have done it again. There's, exceptions to that as well, but y
Yeah, and so
propensity
generally speaking,
evidence.
some things might be relevant because we might think, yeah, I think that is relevant, but the courts are saying it's overly prejudicial because it's going to
Right.
cause jurors to think, no, this person's guilty. I'm going to err on the side of saying, throw this
Guilt,
person in jail
sure.
for the other
Yeah,
reasons.
absolutely. So, at this point, to get all the way back, at this point, they don't have enough to charge her with homicide, that not just because there's no body, I don't think that had um, any bearing on it, but early in the investigation, they're filing their search warrants. They have a search warrant for the house. I'm sure they had a search warrant for the vehicle that grandma reported smelled
Now,
like a
now,
dead
before we get
body.
to the search warrants,
Okay.
I don't want to forget about that because I really
Yeah.
wanted to hit that hard. But I want to just close up this whole timing issue because I think that's relevant, and I think a lot of our listeners might miss a huge point here. The reason why I say that is I
Yeah.
like to watch cop shows, and they miss it all the time. I like to watch Blue Bloods, and so in Blue Blood, there's a constant tension between Danny Reagan and his sister, who's the assistant ADA or assistant DA, Aaron Reagan. He's like, well, won't you bring these charges? Bring these charges. And she's saying, you got to bring me the evidence. I can't bring these charges until you give me the evidence. The reason why you don't want to bring charges too early is you have a right to a speedy trial. And so if you bring the charges too early and you're not ready for your case, the defense can say, you know what? You're not ready. Let's do a trial really quickly here. And
Yeah,
so
right.
if you have
And
this
you have
quick
a
trial, what is the not last right, but what is one of the
right,
other rights
yeah.
we've missed?
Double jeopardy. So we get one bite at the apple, and
One shot.
if we screw up, we never ever get to refile absent new and separate untainted
So
evidence,
there's some
which like
danger.
never happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some danger in bringing a case too quickly until you're ready to bring that case.
Yep, there's certainly a sweet spot in the timeline as far as we have sufficient evidence to charge, but we have sufficient evidence to charge, and we're not jumping the gun, but not waiting too long
Okay.
either.
So I do want to now get into the search warrant, but before we get there, you just teed it up well. You're great at giving these segues, and that is,
Oh,
we
sorry.
talked about how you're going to win.
Yeah.
At trial, you got to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, we got that, but that's not the standard for bringing the charge. So talk a little bit about what do you have to bring the charge, and then how do you get evidence, because again, the defense they're not just going to offer up. They don't have to be a witness against themselves. So how does the prosecution team, which includes detectives, gather this evidence?
Sure. So, first of all, to charge, you need probable cause, which I kind of briefly touched on. That means that there's sufficient evidence at that point in time to believe that there's a likelihood that this person is who in fact committed whatever crime they committed.
Give me a
Um,
number. Is that the
like
50%? Is that the teeter
51,
totter rule?
52%, yes. So
Okay.
probable cause is just like yes,
All right.
I would describe it 51, 52%. I don't at this point in time, I can't go out willy-nilly, find Joel off the street and say, I'm gonna charge you with, I don't know, something, robbery, right? I can't just do that. I have to have sufficient facts, a probable cause finding that each and every element of whatever crime it is I'm charging is there. Let me rephrase that, and we can cut that last clip out. I I have to show probable cause that each element is present in the affidavit. So the officer that's investigating, the detective that's investigating, submits an affidavit, and I review it and I say, okay, all the elements of robbery are present, including venue and the identity of who I believe did this. And then I charge at that point. So
Okay.
I have a probable cause to believe, and then I charge. At that point in time, the investigation really kicks off because it's no longer a matter of just probable cause. We're trying to get to that beyond a reasonable doubt standard burden, right? So through the time while the process is moving, detectives are continuing their investigation, continuing working on whatever is going on in the case. And then by the time we get to trial, that burden rises to beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay. So how do you get the evidence that you're going to use at trial? Talk a little bit about this whole process of
Sure.
gathering evidence, because there's another fundamental constitutional right at play here. Is the Fourth Amendment, the right to be secure in your possessions, to be free from unreasonable searches and
Unreasonable search.
seizures without a
Exactly.
warrant.
Exactly. And the rule generally is that any search by the government is unreasonable, minus a few exceptions, unless there is a warrant.
All right. How
And
do you get a warrant?
in order to get a warrant, you need probable cause and a judge's signature saying, "Hey, probable cause exists to believe that there's evidence of a crime in the limited scope of wherever it is that they're searching." So if it's a robbery and I believe that Joel has jewels and gold in his house, and I believe that it's in his bedroom in a lockbox. As a detective, I write an affidavit supporting why I believe these things. A prosecutor reviews it first, signs off on it, then takes it to the judge. Again, judicial oversight, and they review it, confirming that there is in fact probable cause.
Again,
If
you
there
have to
is,
describe where you are looking,
what?
what you
Yep.
are looking for, and all of these elements. You have to have probable cause to believe you're going to find it there.
Exactly. It has to be very limited, most of the time, very, very limited.
Right.
Um, so, and that's how it works. So, in order to not violate somebody's Fourth Amendment rights, law enforcement needs a warrant, generally, minus the few exceptions, to search and seize whatever property or material it is that they're looking for. So, I think that answers your question.
All right. So I'm throw this other example by you. We might cut this out. We might leave it in. But Candy Montgomery, her murder trial is covered, I believe, in a Netflix special. It's an amazing
Yeah.
story. We're going to cover it in
I'm
depth
reading the
here.
book right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to cover it in a future podcast. It is an amazing story. I'm actually going to do a CLE on it come Valentine's Day, because what doesn't say I love you better than an axe murder case?
Axe
But
murder.
nonetheless, one of the issues in this case was the police wanted to get the clothes that Candy was wearing when the murder took place. All right. But in order to get the clothes, they don't just send an affidavit, a warrant to whoever and saying, I want to search your closet to find your clothes, right? You just don't do that. You guys describe the location that you want to search, and with a certain level of, like you said, probable cause that you will find that item there. Did I kind
Mhm.
of do a fair summary of the Fourth Amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what they
Yeah.
did. The lawyers, there were three of them, all had her bloody clothes that she was wearing, and they transferred it from lawyer to lawyer to lawyer. And each lawyer would then transfer it from house to office to car. And the reason why they did that was no warrant could ever describe where these clothes were, because no one really knew where they were at any one given time, unless the police just happened to get a warrant that said, hey, that lawyer's name, I want to search the trunk because I believe the clothes are in that trunk.
How is that not aiding and abetting, or like
Oh, it
how
probably
is
is.
or well that and oh,
Highly unethical.
I was gonna say, and it's certainly not ethical.
Right. But from a Fourth Amendment analysis, would that
Sure,
not
sure.
work?
If all that shit aside, Fourth Amendment, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I couldn't believe it when I read that. That's exactly
That's
what you guys
insane.
did.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. When we actually get to that story on our podcast, we're going to have a lot of fun. Maybe we should air that one come Valentine's Day as well. I don't know. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll work
back
on
to
that.
our story here. I think you did a great job of describing how the constitutional
Thank
rights
you.
actually play out in a real murder trial. But now I want you to apply that to what's going on in this case. Let's go over some of
Sure.
the things that the detectives are finding out. Let's start off here with the first one because I'm going to go over all the evidence now that they're going to learn within the first month. Okay, the first piece of evidence: a child is missing. Kaylee is missing. They don't know where Kaylee is. What will the prosecution do with that fact? I already kind of alluded to. Could they not bring murder charges because they don't have a body?
No, not at all. That's not the rule at all. There's nothing prohibiting the state, the government, from charging the murderer if there's probable cause to believe.
There you
And I guess
go.
this is a good time again to touch base. There's two systems. There's the prosecutor charging, and some jurisdictions use indictments of a grand jury by grand jury. Grand juries can indict a chicken sandwich. It's true because their rules are so lax. All the evidence comes in. Defense doesn't have the right to be present. Like there's like those trial rights don't exist at the grand jury stage. So the state gets to throw everything at the wall and say, I believe this person did this thing. No right to the defense, no right to whatever, maybe silence is the only one. Um, no right to confrontation, no right to whatever. All the things that exist that protect the defendant elsewhere exist. So you can certainly indict just about anybody for just about anything if there's sufficient probable cause again
Okay.
to indict them. So in this case, she absolutely could have and was indicted, I believe, prior to the body being located.
You're saying as long as they have probable cause that the person is deceased, and maybe in this case, what would be that probable cause that baby Kaylee is deceased?
Sure. So there was so much information early on. So A, we have a missing 3-year-old. B, we have a mother who doesn't report the child missing actually ever. It's grandma who finally calls 31 days, I believe,
Right.
that she was missing. We have all of Casey's lies and diversions to not help law enforcement actually figure out what the heck is actually going on. And then we get to the physical evidence. So once Casey, all of these things are going, the investigation's going. Law enforcement has a search warrant for the home, the Anthony's home. They locate duct tape. They locate incriminating searches, online searches on the family computer. They have eventually, well, I won't jump ahead yet. I won't spoil it.
I was thinking maybe our listeners, maybe we should play the shot game, and every time we mention probable cause, you got to take a shot.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Um, they won't make it this far. We've been recording
That's
for
right. All right. So
can't
the
even see.
second piece of evidence I want to throw, you just mentioned it a little bit, but I was second on my outline. I want to touch on it again, and that
Yeah.
is the evidence of the lies. As the prosecution, how do you handle those lies?
So it certainly goes to guilt, and as far or like guilty conscience, it's certainly the again I've mentioned this before. The case theme, the trial theme is writing itself for the prosecutors, because what mother wouldn't be forthcoming about their missing baby if they really
Okay.
believed
I
them to be
get
missing?
that, but let me just play devil's advocate just a little bit because I know some of
Sure.
our listeners are already a little bit confused, and so you're going to help us shine some light on our confusion. We already covered the Fifth Amendment right not to be a witness against yourself, and so here,
Right.
why
She
are her
waived
lies
that.
going to be? Did she intentionally waive it?
So, let me back up for a second. So, I don't know if I assume maybe you can speak to this. When she's
I
interviewed,
can, but I'm.
I assume she was given Miranda because the statements were never suppressed, and had she said something that was incriminating, and we never got there in the process.
So
So I would
in Miranda, let me just kind of, I just did a class on this and it kind of
yeah.
surprised me. And so in Miranda, again, the right is in the Fifth Amendment, and the right is not to be a witness against yourself. In Miranda, what the court noted was sometimes police will use coercive pressure to trick you into talking, and then
Yeah,
you end up becoming a witness against yourself. And so that's what Miranda was designed to prevent, was coercive
sure.
police tactics. But here, if you remember, that first 911 call was where the mother said, "Hey, Casey, get on the phone here and talk." That the
Right.
police were not involved there with the first
Right.
lie.
Right.
And,
And that's a good point. The lies start prior to her actual contact with law enforcement. But I was speaking more specifically about the Universal interview, all of her
yes,
lies up to that point, even.
I would
And all of
bet. Go on.
you go ahead.
I'm pretty sure she was Mirandized before the Universal
I'm almost
interview.
certain.
Yes,
I'm almost certain because if she hadn't, it would have been suppressed. But this whole time she's lying, she's making statements. And something that's important to remember is that it's not a defendant's statements are admissible against themselves, even if they don't testify. So all of the lies that she said are all relevant and are all going to come in at the time of trial.
and
So that is evidence.
they wouldn't necessarily be able to come in if she was in custody and the police did not Mirandize her. So that's how the Miranda rights come in. If the person is in custody, which up until at a certain point, she never was in custody, really, until they arrested her. But the whole take us on a little tour around Universal, I don't believe she was
She
in
was
custody at
free to go. That
all.
was all voluntary. Yeah.
Exactly.
She was free to say, I'm done talking with you. I want my attorney at any point in time. So
Right.
all of those statements are going to come in. That's again, I would argue consciousness of guilt. Um,
Now, this next one, I am going to be fascinated to see your response on, and that is this: the car smells like a damn dead body. Okay,
yeah.
how
So
is that going to be used at trial? Because how do you introduce this is what something smelled like?
right. Well, so this was actually so the witness that made that statement was Cindy Anthony, grandma of Kaylee, mom of Casey. It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car. She didn't realize at that time that what she was saying was potentially accurate. She was just saying, "God, it smells, it stinks." Um,
Interesting.
Right. And so Cindy testified at the trial. So it came in under her testimony. She testified to her 911 calls. The recordings were played in court as evidence. Um, and she would not only be able to testify to the 911 call, but her firsthand experience of what that smelled like. Additionally, something really weird in this case that took place in the forensic world was tests on the trunk of the vehicle to it was like a scent or a smell and odor test. So they cut a piece of the carpet out of the vehicle of the trunk and ran forensic testing on it to try to prove the presence of chloroform and other um, signs of decomposition or decay, which wasn't a widely accepted science, and I'm not sure that it still is, even this long. And even though we've gotten super advanced as far as forensics are concerned, I don't know if that's even accepted technology or science here
Right.
currently in 2025.
Because they would
And
need
but that was evidence that was presented at the trial.
I mean, they would need some kind of scientific evidence because her statement, in fact, we haven't even gotten to the trial yet, but I would think if I were the prosecutor, I would be nervous about that statement even being admissible because this lady, the grandmother, Cindy, has she smelled a dead body before? Does she really know what a dead body smells like? She knows it stinks, but clearly she didn't believe it smelled like a dead body, or else her first call to
Right.
911 would have been a lot more frantic. And so it seems
Sure.
overly prejudicial. And I don't think the court would keep that statement out. We'll have to wait till we get to that episode to see what the court actually did. You would need some kind of scientific evidence to say, no, yes, it smelled like a dead body, and here is why.
Sure. That's an interesting take. I would not have thought about it being I mean, yes, absolutely. And yes, foundation, how in the heck does this old lady know what a dead body smells like? But I don't know.
Are
That's
you telling me
interesting.
it's a shock that you don't think like a defense attorney?
Yeah, it is. It's shocking that my brain is one road, one. one way.
They're all
Um,
guilty, right? They're all guilty. No, I don't say that. All right. How about this one? Human hair was found in the trunk of the car. Talk to
this
me a little
is
bit about this.
arguably one of my favorite pieces of evidence that I think points to Kaylee's deceased body being in the trunk of the vehicle. So hair, it forensically is fascinating. Something in this case, it was found with what we call like a death band around the root of the hair.
What is a
So
death
when
band?
there's three phases of hair growth. It's adagen, catagen, and telogen, and I'm probably pronouncing those wrong. Anagen, catagen, telogen. Anagen phase growing, it's active, the root is present. The only way that it's going to come out of a scalp is if it's forced out or if you're brushing and it gets yanked. But usually that root comes out, that waxy substance. That's in the anagen phase of hair growth. And the catagen, it's still growing, but it's still healthy, it's still living. And then in the telogen phase is when it's dead and the root is dead and it just falls out because everybody sheds hair, right? When somebody passes and the body starts to decompose, the hair around the root will have a banding, a death band
Ah,
around the hair, and it's microscopic. So there's macroscopic properties and there's microscopic properties of hair, and that band can be used to determine that it came from someone likely to have been deceased. The problem with it in this phase, this piece of hair being in this phase, is that it's not in the anagen phase anymore, right? So that root is no longer attached,
okay.
likely. And that becomes problematic because the only way forensically we can say this is definitely someone's hair conclusively, we can say this strand of hair matches and belongs to Leandra Hazlett, is if that root is attached, because that is where the DNA is found. So that DNA can be then compared and conclusively belonging to me. Whereas if it's just a strand of my hair from the telogen phase, right? There's no root attached. Someone can forensically review it microscopically and say, I cannot confirm that that piece of hair came from Leandra Hazlett, but I can say that it is consistent with the hair of Leandra Hazlett. So
Okay.
the problem in this case again was we couldn't say definitively that it was even Kaylee's hair, just that it had a death band around it, which is a sign of decomposition or coming from a deceased body.
Interesting. All right. All right. What about this one? Chloroform form. Some
Yeah,
trace amounts of chloroform was found in the trunk. What would that tell you as the
sure.
prosecutor?
So
What would you do with that?
chloroform is a natural occurring. It can be natural, like it. And I'm going to butcher that. I don't know that is it's. I don't want to say that because I don't know that that's 100% accurate. Um, Chloroform is interesting because there can be natural sources of chloroform, like decomposing trash, for example. Decomposing trash shouldn't have cupulous amounts. I don't know if cupulous is a word. Huge amounts of chloroform, but it is possible that certain trash and decomposing stuff could put off and produce chloroform, right? And that was the argument in this case. Casey had a couple different stories, but one of them was that that she had garbage bags in her trunk.
Right.
So their argument was, of course, chloroform is present, because we had this junk in the hot Florida heat riding around in her trunk for a month. So again, that pokes holes in the state's argument that chloroform was present because chloroform was used by Casey to knock out Kaylee.
All right. So let's just kind of do a quick summary of what we know so far. And so we know that Kaylee body is not found. They don't know where Kaylee is. There is some evidence that she might be dead for a lot of different reasons. Why, for example, normally the mother would know where the daughter was. Here, the mother was lying about talking to the daughter, even I think that day on July 15th. Turns out it was a lie. They haven't seen her in a long, long time. You had these different things that were found in the car. There were some insects in the car that were also
There's
known to be
insect activity, sure.
right.
Actually, I wanna take a moment to actually talk one of the other things that I think is equally as fascinating as the hair banding is the presence of grave wax
Yeah. What is
in
that?
the grave wax is okay, so when your body decomposes I feel like I sound so creepy when I talk about this stuff, like, I shouldn't know this
I
much
don't
about
even
this.
want to know why you know all this information, right? We're not going to go
I
there.
I have a master's degree in forensics and
I'm just
criminal
saying,
and
Jared, sleep with
investigation.
your eyes open.
Right, right, like this, no. Um, when bodies decompose, the lipids, right? Like you start to deteriorate, but the lipids stay and it leaves a waxy, fatty substance behind, right? And it's called adipose. There's a Latin or something word, adipose, something. I don't know. I have it wrote down, and I don't know that it doesn't matter. Adipose, or I don't know. It's grave wax is how I describe it
That's how
because
I would
that's
pronounce it too. Grave
simple
wax.
terms. Simple terms. Again, proof or signs of decomp because as the body decomposes, the fats are the last thing to decompose, and they create this waxy, like yucky substance was located in the vehicle. Again, they made the argument, defense made the argument that it was left over from garbage. It was trash. It was, I think at one point, a dead squirrel or something. Like she had hit a squirrel. So that's where the death smell was coming from. Um,
Now
yeah.
there is such an idea as there's two sides to every story. So we're talking about how would a prosecutor view all this evidence? Well, there's going to be another story that is told at trial, and that's going to be coming from the defense attorney because that's how the American judicial system works. Yes, the prosecution gets to make their case, but then the defense will make their case, and the jury of your peers will decide the outcome. All right. So next week I want to unpack what the lawyers are going to be doing with these facts that we just talked about. So there's a lot of facts here, but you don't just
Yeah.
dump them in the lap of the juries and say, go at it, come back with a verdict. Now, again,
Right.
I also looked at the Amanda Knox murder trial, and that's what she thought it was the American judicial system. He's like, as long as they knew all the information, it's like a computer. You input all this information into the computer, and it's going to spit out the right answer. No, that's not how juries work. You got to package all this information, all this stuff in a way that is digestible by the jury such that they will return a verdict of guilty, or if you're the defense, of not guilty. And so, Leandra, that's what we're going to unpack in our next episode. Are you ready for it?
I am so ready.
All right. Any last thoughts regarding today's episode?
Just that there was a whole lot of overwhelming physical evidence that points at Casey being responsible.
All right. So right now you are viewing a guilty verdict as something that is obtainable.
If I was the prosecutor on this case, I would have thought it was a slam dunk.
You
There's
already
no way,
you,
in no world would I have ever thought a jury would look at all this evidence and say she's not guilty.
there you go. Leandra is already working on her book deal. All right. It's been a great episode. We'll see you next episode.
We'll see ya.